want to call the roll?
Oops. Yes, I do. Sorry, I'm pushing to YouTube. Let me call the roll. Counselor Stapleton.
Here.
Counselor Hoy.
Here.
Counselor Lewis.
Here.
Counselor Gonzalez.
Here.
And Mayor Bennett.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. I need approval of minutes.
Move
I move
approval,
approval of the minutes.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Lewis moves. Hoy seconds. Approval of minutes. Any discussion? Any corrections? Okay. You want to call the roll? Kelly?
I do. Counselor Lewis.
Aye.
Counselor Hoy.
Aye.
Counselor Stapleton.
Aye.
Counselor Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mayor Bennett.
Aye. Okay, we have no public comment, I'm told. Is there anyone here that is a member of the public that wanted to comment?
No, sir.
All right, we'll move on then. We'll go to updates, communications, and engagement, January, February, community briefings, as well as the polling schedule. Who will lead us? Courtney, okay, you go ahead.
Thank you so much. What I'd like to do too is just refer you to a section in the packet where you'll notice we have a whole bunch of ideas that we've been collecting through the online portal. So we have a webpage stood up that is about the steering committee and the scope of the bond. We're inviting people to put in project ideas and suggestions. And there's a section in your packet that starts with sidewalk ideas. It looks like this without all the scribble. And so
what I'd suggest, if we could, I just mentioned this, if it's at all, there I see it. If we could number the pages, I think it makes it a lot quicker to get to and around it, navigating it. As long as they're going to be this long, I think it would help us out.
Yes.
Thanks. I found it though, but did everyone get a handle on it?
It does help. We'll make sure to put page numbers on it.
Great, thank you.
And so what I'd like you to notice is that we've gotten quite a lot of feedback. We have 83 folks have been typing in their ideas for projects, which is great. Most of them are in that sidewalks and streets category. And some of them are specific and many of them are general in nature about improving sidewalks and improving streets in general, adding bike lanes, those kinds of things. There are some really specific things, you know, the lots of streets mentioned and some other park ideas, and I'd be happy to run through it. But I'd also just let you know that we'll be sorting through all of those ideas and bringing them to you in March.
What are we doing then to process them? Courtney, what are we trying to do with these when we put them together?
That's going to be the subject of our March meeting.
Oh, okay.
So coming up in February, what we're doing right now is we're just collecting all the ideas from any source. And so, as you know, we're out doing community briefings. I've seen some of you in those briefings at different neighborhood associations, and we're collecting ideas there as well. And we're going to be pulling all of those ideas together and then putting them against the set of criteria that you guys have been working on. And then you'll be able to say, well, that doesn't seem right. Or let's add that into the bond. Let's consider this one depending on whether we have any money left. And so we're going to be doing that kind of work together in March. Okay. But before we get to March, so we're getting all of these community ideas now. We're going to have in February when we gather, we'll have some polling data.
Okay.
And so we'll be able to consider what people are saying in a statistically valid sample is important to them, and that might help weigh some of the priorities and some of the projects moving forward. So we'll get this, we're going to continue to gather ideas, and then we'll get the polling kind of quantifiable, what's the right way to maybe go for the most bang for our buck, and then we'll sort through the projects together. After staff will take a crack at it for you, and then you can adjust in the March meeting.
Okay. Virginia, did you?
Yeah, and this is like I question. I'm not sure if it would be helpful, so maybe some of you guys could let me know if you think it would be as well. But I have this, when I was reading these, this packet and understanding that there's also the CIP, I don't know if it would be helpful for me to know if when somebody makes a suggestion, if that's already in the CIP, I would kind of love to know, like, you know, you had things kind of noted here and there about different project asks, but I wonder if even if somebody said something, but staff could let us know in this format that that's already on the CIP. I'm not sure if that would be helpful for for others or even for me, if it would just be extra work for no gain. I'd be interested in hearing from others on that.
Yeah, Counselor, I think Peter Fernandez, I think that would be a great step for us to take, because if it's in the CIP, it's already funded. So it's not to say that you as a body couldn't make the choice to say, hey, we can use that funding for something else. Let's put it in a bond. But typically what we like to do in bonds is do projects that do not have funding already identified. So I think, you know, projects that are suggested that are already in the CIP, I think would be a great thing for you to know. It's a good suggestion.
Thank you.
Thank you. So all I was going to just do there was mention to you that there's a whole bunch of project ideas as well. And we're considering that part of the public testimony that we are receiving. And then if you'd like, I could give you a little bit of a summary from the Elna, Nen, Scan, and Fay Wright neighborhoods that we've been to this week. We're hearing an interest in more housing. So from Elna, it was about more senior housing. There was an interest in having maybe more capacity in courts, which would, you know, be probably a physical space if we're using bond money. At Nen, I was.
Could you just 1 second, like
yes.
on Elna or Nen or any of them, can you kind of give us a feeling of like, what was the turnout like? I mean, was this just Suzanne and one other person, or kind of what was going on when what was the dynamic of the meeting?
I can. Dynamic is a little different, I think.
However you want to describe it. I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, it's fine. So at Elna, I didn't write down how many people, but it was a meeting that had some in the meeting space and some participating online. My guess would be probably 15 to 20 people were all in. And there were some strong opinions, and the meeting overall, I would say it was challenging to brainstorm. They would have rather seen the specificity of the measure, which we don't have yet. And I offered to come back. So that was my opinion. I think Councillor Hoy, you were there. Would you want to provide any other opinion?
Yeah, it was difficult for people to conceptualize what we were asking them. They really wanted to see a list and then to react to it rather than to come up with projects out of the blue. So they were I think they were just having difficulty creating a list. They wanted to more react to ideas that were already out there.
So they didn't have, Elna doesn't have projects in their neighborhood they would like to pitch, or how does that?
I think it more caught them off guard that I would be having that kind of a really open-ended question of them. But as I left, I know they all have the website link and are going to be able to contribute more project ideas. And also, this is just the beginning of the conversation, and we'll be back more and more often. So I think it was just a mix of everything, and so it caught them a little bit off guard. But
I hope they understand this is what outreach can look like. Is you can actually go out and ask people, what do you need in your neighborhood? And that's often we're criticized that we didn't do that. We came out with all the decisions made, and so I can kind of see how I'm not sure how to correct that, but I think it's getting across to them that what we're trying to do is find out just from you, what do you think you need? You know, if they think they need something specifically on a street, it really helps to hear it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I would also just add that I think it's gotten easier too as I've been going through this last week. I've really I've been kind of adapting the
Yeah.
way we're talking about it. And I'm really only showing 3 slides, a cover and the basic premise of the bond, and then the pie. And I stop and just have conversation. And that
Right.
seems to work better.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I mean, for that neighborhood association in particular, I know because I attend it regularly. I know that they would love to see an intersection improvement at 45th and Center Street because of the high volume of traffic there. They would love to
Right.
see a street light. They
Yeah.
would love to see a street light down more towards Cordon or some sort of improved where the new subdivisions going in at the mushroom plant.
Right.
They're very concerned about traffic there, and they're very concerned about the intersections at Market and Lancaster and also Sunnyview and Lancaster, and they would like to see safety improvements there. I know those are regular topics of conversation. They did not mention those when Courtney asked them the question.
That's
I think
interesting.
I just
Yeah.
think they were having a hard time understanding, they just couldn't quite wrap their heads around it yet. They will. They'll get there.
Yeah, they will. It's good to know that there are things they want. I can't imagine they're sitting out there not wanting something. Okay.
And so then I was at NEN and there were about 30 there. And what I took away, and Councillor Stapleton, you should chime in, but what I took away was an impression that they would like to know more about how that streets and sidewalks half of the pie could be broken out more specifically to streets, sidewalks, and bike lanes. And that might be challenging for us to do because the budgets are so integrated, but we can talk more about maybe how we evaluate the projects so that we can be more clear that this has a bike improvement, this has a sidewalk improvement. There was an emphasis on prioritizing routes to schools and parks. There was a conversation about replacing lighting with LED and some shields on them. Adding some shelters and affordable housing. Other specific kinds of housing were also mentioned. This was interesting, an improvement to pavement condition, but not just building new. So in our parlance, we call that R&R, pavement R&R. So that's something that we did in the 2008 bond and probably something we can do again. There was a request for State Street and a request for replacing sidewalks. And Peter, are you going to make me more,
Courtney, if I
precise?
I love this, turning on the video so you know that I want to speak. Just very quickly, because I think it's important for the councilors to know, if we do any repaving projects, those automatically come with ADA improvements. So that's what the law requires. So we have ramps everywhere, but an repaving of the sort that would come from the bond would automatically trigger upgrading all of the ramps, making sure that they all meet the latest standards. So that's why Courtney and I were talking about this earlier, this breaking up projects into what's sidewalk, what's ADA, what's this, well, all the projects will come with ADA improvements. All projects will, if there aren't sidewalks, like Fisher Road is one of my favorite projects. Well, that's a sidewalk project that will probably come with bike lanes as well. So yeah, it's also sort of an upgrade. So I think we'll just educate people. It's important that you as committee members understand it, but educate the public that for transportation, all of these things sort of come packaged.
Right. What about are slurry seals part of your R&R? There seemed like for a long time we were doing a lot of slurry seals.
Yeah, so slurry seals are not bond eligible.
Okay.
Not capital. So what we're looking at here is at least a 2-inch overlay. So we would scrape the asphalt, we would fix the sub base,
wow,
and then that triggers ADA improvements. ADA.
Okay.
Sorry, Courtney.
No, that's great. Did you have anything else to add, Councillor Stapleton, about the NEN review?
Yeah, I would say that there's been a recurring theme at NEN lately over the past year to just really focus on maintaining existing infrastructure instead of installing new infrastructure, because they haven't seen the maintaining of the level that they want to see with maintaining the existing stuff. They really want us to be cautious about putting in new things that we again would be caught in that same position of not being able to maintain, and they would slowly become dangerous or just out of working order. So Other things for NEN would be parks. I know they want to see improvements back at Barrack Field, maybe some better play equipment, or maybe even a new pocket park somewhere within NEN. But yeah, I think that pedestrian infrastructure, of course, is a huge deal there. And there was some confusion in the beginning whether or not repairing old sidewalks would be part of the bond work. And I was under the understanding that it was. So I tried to encourage that to be one of the things that they put forward.
Yeah, it would have to be, I mean, one of the things that we have talked about is, should we propose just a bucket of money for sidewalk improvements that could then be specified for, primarily routes to schools or route to parks.
Yeah.
We've done stuff like that before. Grinding sidewalk, what would be bond eligible is we're moving the panels and installing new panels. We're installing sidewalks that don't have sidewalks. So we just have to be careful that this kind of grind and patch thing, that would not be bond eligible.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. That helps when I'm talking to folks too.
Yeah.
Do you get the sense that NEN or ELNA or any of the others, that having a specific sidewalk component that has its own funding, and obviously it'd have to involve panel removal and replacement, but that would be attractive to these folks, that realizing that sidewalks have their own separate funding source? Did you get that sense?
I have that impression so far, but again, I have an N of 4.
Sure. No, but it's something that I've heard about for, as long as I've been on council too. And I've had that problem. I live in NEN. Just sidewalks it's an issue. And I've always wondered if we could just have a sidewalk section that would create that kind of commitment.
Yeah,
I think having a sidewalk component to this would make it much more, I think it would make people much more likely to vote for it.
I do
specific,
too. Yeah.
so
I have that feeling.
I'm sorry, Councilor Lewis. Let me just quickly throw this in. We absolutely could do that, and I think that'd be a good thing to do. I would want to caution that we not promise that this bucket would solve all of our sidewalks.
No.
So,
right.
That it would be a bucket to advance the cause.
Yeah, but like having a homeless section saying we're going to solve homelessness.
Exactly.
It ain't going to happen. Okay.
Yeah, I would only comment. I agree with the idea of a separate listing, itemized, whatever, for sidewalks, but I would encourage us to separate that into two. And one would be the replacement of sidewalks that have deteriorated to the point where they would be bond eligible.
Yeah.
And the second part would be installation of sidewalks that are not currently there.
Yeah. Yeah, to create that. And that's the one for you guys, in particular for the newer parts of town. That's the sidewalk issue, is those unconnected pieces. Yeah.
I'm thinking more of the Edgewater area, where there are a number of streets where the sidewalks are in great disrepair.
Right.
Some folks, including my son, can't even drive in their driveway because the routes are so bad.
Right. Okay.
Excellent.
That's a thought. Anyway. Okay.
The next place I was I was in SCAN, and there were 16 in attendance at SCAN. Feedback there was that the affordable housing piece of the pie should be larger. Again, street repair showed up, and specific references to Pringle and Battle Creek street improvements. I heard again the interest in having those that whole half be better delineated among streets and sidewalks and bike lanes. And then expanding the court capacity with a bigger facility was also of interest. And that's where I heard about branch libraries too.
Expand the what again?
Expanding court capacity. I think the idea was that quality of life crimes more of them could be prosecuted if we had a larger.
We had a bigger
facility.
space to prosecute them in.
And then my habit, as those kinds of things are suggested, is just to remember that we can build it, but we have to staff it, and that is a different source of funding. So that's been my response as I'm noting it.
Okay, I'm having I really am having trouble understanding bigger court results in more prosecutions or so. I don't quite get it.
That's the feedback right now.
Was the judge there?
No.
Or that wasn't her pitching her thing. Okay.
No. And then last night I got to visit with Faye Wright. And there were, in my notes, I wrote 7 real people. That's not fair. 7 people who weren't staff is what I mean to say. And the ideas there were trying to build out more parks for which we have master plans, but not any development. That's again where I just remind people about operational costs is what we're trying to avoid. And then creating more bike infrastructure within a network, and then having bike storage and parking at the end of the network. That was feedback that I got from 2 different voices in that room. And then increasing walkability and accessibility, possibly even with some walking bridges over commercial. That was another idea. And then Willamette River access for boating, kayaking, and swimming. So some kind of a facility that would be accessible for folks to the Willamette River. So those are the kinds of creative ideas I'm hearing as I'm out in the neighborhoods. We have briefings through the rest of January and into February around town, and so we'll get more ideas. Yes, Councillor Stapleton.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you could send us your schedule for the different neighborhood associations so that we kind of know when you're coming and can be prepared for that conversation. I love seeing you there and I love this conversation. I just want to come in ready, instead of dropping in and surprise, there's Courtney. But it would help me plan better and prepare better too.
Certainly. It's kind of being updated all the time. But we can maybe get in the habit of sending out a snapshot for the week ahead, if that's okay.
Great. Well,
Good.
Thank you very much. It sounds like a challenging activity. How many times will you visit each neighborhood? Do you expect 2 or 3 times, or do you know yet?
Over the course of the bond, I would expect through November, it would probably be 2 or 3 times. But right now, just in this phase, I think it's just once. I do have to say it's kind of fun. It's like being Oprah for a minute, It's really fun. So so I'm enjoying it. It's not every day you get to go and ask people what they want. It's fun. Okay, so we'll keep up with that.
We're gonna get 18 different suggestions on how to spend $300 million. That's gonna be a whole lot of money.
Yeah, it'll be fun. So if I could just slip into, we've kind of done the community briefings that are going on. I wonder if I could talk a little bit about the polling schedule, if that's okay with people.
Sure.
We do have an active poll right now in the community. You may have heard. We try, our practice is to put a little notice on our website so that people can validate. We do get a lot of questions when we're out polling. Is this really the city? And so we like to have a reference point in case people want to search for it. And I think we're 3 days in. It started Wednesday night, I think. And I have a little bit of input from the early part. We will, at your February meeting, we will have John Horvick available, and he will provide us with a summary of how the poll has fared when we get together in February. As with the focus groups, he's saying that we're seeing initial hesitation, but once everybody learns that we're not going to be increasing rates, support really goes up for the bond measure. And some of our phrasing might be a little different, but the things that are polling really well right now are maintaining and repairing streets and sidewalks. That's the first priority so far. We're seeing affordable housing and shelters. We're calling it purchasing land for affordable housing and shelters. And that's polling in second place. Building new streets and sidewalks is polling in third place. Upgrading security of the city's data and computer systems is coming in fourth, and that's only early, so that might change a lot. And then replacing the aging fire engines and equipment is coming in 5th. Parks is coming in 6th. And then all the way at the bottom is the Civic Center. So we'll just keep polling and see where we get.
I can tell you, I received a poll inquiry. So one of those responses is mine.
Oh, good.
I received it also for the first time in my career, and it sounds like it's pretty predominant.
Good. So we'll continue. I mean, that's going on in the background, and we'll have again a report for you in February. And if we could, I was going to turn over to Clark and Libby, and so that we could see some of the materials that we're preparing. We're constantly refining the message, and so things haven't quite settled so much. But after this poll, we will be more on solid ground. And the staff, by the way, we're preparing a dedicated webpage just for the bond. And as those materials start to settle, you'll see a whole bunch of information available there. So Clark, I'm not sure if it's you or Libby.
Jim, did you have something?
Yeah, I'll throw this out. Should have mentioned it earlier. I don't know if it would be a good idea to have on the website examples of projects that we're simply not going to be able to do because of their individual cost, such as building another bridge across the Willamette River.
Yeah, I'm sorry to see that on the list.
Well, you're asking for folks' comments, so you're getting them. But I think it would be a good idea to maybe have a few examples of, here, this is a project that is so expensive, we're not going to be considering it because we want to get the more bang for the buck, something like that.
Yes. And I think that's reflected in the initial criteria we were working on. And we'll go back to the criteria after we look a little bit at the communication materials, but certainly we can make that one of the questions and answers. Thank you for that feedback. So Clark, is it you or Libby that'll be sharing? Sorry, Clark.
I'm going to
see your lips
share it.
Moving.
Clark is on mute. I'll bring up the fact sheet. I think we'll start with that.
Yeah, I think we'll maybe both talk, but we've been working on preliminary messaging, as I would describe it, for the bond measure. And a few things here that you'll see if you've had a chance to take a look at it. One of them is the pie chart, and a decision, you'll see a few things on the pie chart. One is there aren't any numbers on it, except it says at the top, up to 300 million. What we didn't want to do is convey that there already is a budget for this, but we did want to communicate some idea of proportionality. And so the idea behind the pie chart is that. Another thing about this is that this is a big, complicated measure with a lot of moving parts. And so we've been looking for the simplest way to describe these needs and the simplest possible terms, while also making them concrete enough that members of the public can understand what the heck we're talking about. So I would say it's still a work in progress. Those descriptors, both in the categories of funding needs that you see on the pie chart, and then the descriptions on the back of the fact sheet describing what would be included in each of those categories. Those are important. We have, as Courtney mentioned, there's a survey underway right now in the field, and the results of that will help us in reflecting on this. So, for example, if there's something that isn't that appealing or we find is confusing, we also are doing stakeholder interviews right now and are finding some things that are useful in that regard. So, for example, the category is described now is called streets and sidewalks. The reason for that was we found out in the interviews that a number of people, community leaders essentially, were still asking, well, does that include the Willamette River Bridge? And so we thought maybe we'll just describe it as streets and sidewalks so we avoid that confusion about the Willamette River Bridge being included, because we thought if they have to ask the question, then maybe we should re-describe that in some way. Any feedback on this? Again, this is the current state of the messaging. Any feedback on this, we would appreciate. We're trying, again, the things we're trying to do, communicate that this is still a proposal, that we're still interested in getting feedback. And one of the items there specifically says that we want community feedback. Second, that no decisions have been made on the specific dollar amounts, and that we are trying to be as concrete as we can be while using as few words as possible in describing these community needs. So that's the purpose of it. Again, this won't be the end of messaging. Another thing that I could see will be needed very soon is in interviewing members of city council, the request for talking points that they can use as they attend community meetings or talk to constituents is at the top of the list for several of the council members. So I would think that would be one of the things that we would be doing. And again, the survey results, the stakeholder interviews will be done soon. The survey results will be available soon.
Mark, there's a
We'll be able
question.
to make adjustments there. Sorry,
Chris,
Libby.
did you want to?
Thanks. I just had a question about messaging. Have we settled on Salem Community Improvements for the name of this, or is that just sort of a working title?
That's a working title, I would say, and what we think is a differentiator between all of the infrastructure conversations that are occurring nationally and this is that this City of Salem bond is really about making those community level connections that wouldn't be competitive in a federal market. And so that's why we're landing on this. I think we're still open and flexible, but it seems like that's a differentiator so far. And it's silencing, at least in my experience so far, that question about, well, how is this like Biden's pitch? So
God.
so far I haven't had that question, and I think it's because of this change in messaging, but we're open and welcome any other feedback.
I have a quick question.
I like that approach, frankly, that it be very, very clearly Salem's projects, not somehow related to anything else. Because the question will become, well, they've spent $5 trillion. Is this how you're going to spend that part of our $5 trillion or whatever those numbers are that get thrown around? I think it'll confuse people. Yeah, Virginia.
Thank you. I had 2 points. When I read this last night, I was looking at the words that you have to the left of the pie chart, and it caused me to kind of stutter and go back. And if it's causing me to do that, I know that it's going, and I already know a lot about what's going on with this. I could only imagine that it might be confusing for folks in our community. But in that section, you talk about the previous bond and the projects that have been completed, and you throw some numbers around there like the 100 million. But then right to the right, you have up to 300 million, right? It's just a little jarring when you're reading it to try to figure out what are we talking about here. So I love the fact that we're talking about our good history with bonds, and I think that that needs to be communicated. But I also think it could be communicated either above the pie chart, and the words to the left of the pie chart just need to be about the current bond and the pie chart that we're referring to, or that's there for a visual. The other thing I would say is that because we are getting so much feedback about bike infrastructure, I'm wondering if the word bike needs to be somewhere in our subtitles.
Thank you. That's great feedback. I like adding some kind of reference in streets and sidewalks to bikes. And I think we can it might be too much to try to convey history and experience in this fact sheet, and instead use some of our web materials to balance that out. So thank you for that feedback. I wonder, Libby, would you mind taking that down so we can see more of the faces?
Sure.
I wonder if there's any other feedback from what you might be hearing in the community, or okay, so Clark and Libby, is there anything else to share on this point? we have many other materials. I think we should say we're still building them, but any other bits and pieces that you want to share from the communications and engagement work?
I think that, Courtney, you mentioned something very important, which is once the messaging, call this preliminary messaging, but once you've arrived at messaging, then it's very important to keep it consistent and to stay on message. There's nothing more important than that.
Yes. Well, with everyone's permission, we can switch to the discussion item in number 5, which is really kind of coming back to those criteria that we hope to use to help select projects for inclusion. So this is also in your packet just after the minutes, early in the packet. And this represents a slight update based on your conversation in December. I've tried to think about project selection on an individual basis and then some kind of an analysis of the whole package when we're finished. And so what you'll see is a reference, and these are again the same, they're borrowing from CIP criteria. You can see is it bondable? You know, that's an in or out question. Feasibility, readiness, sometimes to your point, Councillor Stapleton earlier, sometimes we already have things in a CIP or we'll have them in an infrastructure plan or we'll have them in a parks master plan. And that makes it easier, faster to do that work because it's already in an infrastructure plan. Overall cost, I think this, Councillor Lewis, gets to your point. If the project would use up quite a bit of available funding in that category, it might not be a priority just because it would make it harder for us to make a big impact everywhere. Ongoing cost, that's something we want to be sensitive to, and we'll characterize that for you. If it's, for example, a brand new park, we would have to somehow find funds to continue to maintain and operate that park. For streets and sidewalks, you can see safety, mobility, all of those criteria. We've added in an equity line per your last conversation, and then a climate impact line, again, also from the last conversation of the steering committee. And in the parks category, you can see an equity line is also added. And then when we get to the whole package, once that starts to settle, we can also look to make sure that there's some geographic distribution so that everyone gets some benefit, and then take another equity view of it and a whole overarching climate view. If you were to turn the page, you'd see kind of how I think this might take shape for you to consider. This would be sort of what we call traffic light kind of report. So you would see the projects listed and you would see red, green, or yellow for a negative impact, a neutral impact on any one of these categories, and then a positive impact. And so you would get just this ginormous traffic light report and could be deciding, oh, this one's green all the way across, that should go in for sure. Or this one has a benefit, a really great benefit in this place, but not so good in this one. Maybe we'll hold on that one and put it in a second tier in case there's enough money to do it later, something like that. So I'm hoping that if we can put all these projects in this framework for you, that would make your decision making a little easier about what you would recommend to the council to include.
I'll throw this out. I don't know how people feel about it, but if you have just the 3 positive, neutral, or negatives, it's not broad enough for me. I mean, can we have a numbering system in each one being the highest, 2, the middle, 3? So you'd be able to say this is a positive impact number 1, which means it is really positive, as opposed to it's positive and maybe it's positive. Some kind of weighting system rather than just the one name. It's just a thought.
I've got, oh, sorry, Courtney, go ahead. Oh.
No, after you.
Okay. one of the concerns I had from something you said earlier was that the fire equipment came in like number 5 or something like that. I'm really concerned about the life safety kind of direct service impacts of these bond measures, particularly the fire bond measure, both siting of additional fire stations and getting the equipment up to date. I'm not sure that one takes some explanation that it's not just it's 15 years old, it's that it won't get to your house before the heart attack kills you. And that I think becomes very concerning to me, particularly as we look potentially at perhaps an increase in fires as well. If the climate stuff actually plays out, we could be looking at potential fire areas in the community where we could have potential conflagrations, and that our equipment is in as bad a shape as it is. And I don't know how to gauge that, the public likes the idea of parks and bike lanes, and that's all real nice, but that's until one of them dies because we can't get an EMT to them. And I don't know how to gauge that.
I think we should probably wait for the full results from the poll, because
okay, I see what you're saying.
There's an earlier question in the poll that asks people to put a portion of $1 to each of the priorities, and the fire protection is really high in terms of how much people are willing to put toward it. So I don't want to consider the first night of polling as so if we could just,
it kind of scared me that maybe people don't know how bad this situation is.
I'm not getting any pushback on any of the categories in these conversations in the community. I think that's, I do often, as I'm speaking, I thank everyone, because of our work together in 2006 with the fire, and in 2008, and then with the police station and the library station facility, we're able to drop some things off the rolls, which keeps everything constant. And so I think people are picking up. And then if asked, I have a lot more. The fire chief and fire have given us a great deal of information that helps validate that need. Yeah. And no one's batting an eye about that so far.
Good. Thank you.
Sorry if
that concerned me when I heard you say it was coming in 5th. It was like, oh no, people get it. Yeah.
That's only one of the questions in the poll. So I think it's doing very well.
Okay.
So sorry.
Well, I hope we have a way of weighting that so that we can see it as we look at this. Some of this stuff is just fundamentally important to city services, both in life safety, equity, you name it. They're just absolutely, if we're not doing that, we're not doing the job kind of thing. So, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Virginia.
Yeah, I'm having a thought. I'm going to try and work it out with you guys because what Councilor Lewis said, I think holds true for me too, just needing a little bit more nuance than the 3 layers. But what came to my mind was about our priority budgeting. And that's kind of the framework we're already functioning in as far as how we do our city budget. And so as counselors, when we're looking at this, right, is there some way that we could use that priority budgeting with the projects themselves? That would be really helpful for me. And I don't know if that would add more nuance or it would add maybe that flexibility in numbering, just something to throw out there.
Yeah. And I think to just second that is you've got this CIP methodology that has been extraordinarily successful in keeping the right projects in front of us, not the political projects always, but the ones that are really in serious need. That I think that CIP system has been very successful, if that would be applied to these as well.
Yes. And we can do that. What you see before you in the criteria, those are the numbering system of 1 through 5 is sort of masked, but we can certainly pull that numbering system forward. Josh, did you want to address how the CIP works a little bit more?
Well, the CIP functions a lot like what this process is. It's the collection of projects, the scoring of projects, and then prioritizing them for funding. So I would see this operating very similar to that, probably with both CIP projects and projects collected this way. They'd probably go into the same bucket for prioritization.
Great. I think that it also might help explain to some of us how that CIP project development works. So it wouldn't hurt a bit to have that kind of, stretched out and opened up and a little more transparent to us based on us putting this together. I think it'd be helpful to folks.
Yeah, happy to walk through that process.
Great. Appreciate that, Josh. Thank you.
So
this is good stuff, Courtney. This is very good.
Oh, good.
Really a good report. Thank you.
Yes, and we'll make some adjustments to it. And I think based on how what we'll have available for the next meeting, which will be again the polling data and some other things, we may have some room to do a little bit of that CIP framework before you start applying it in March to the bond package. So let's try to do that.
Yeah, I think even just an explanation of the process that you're using to get that CIP put together so we can understand how it would apply to this. The other is to, if possible, if you can find a couple of people you can recruit to come in for public comment. I'm glad Lois is willing to come in. If we have some folks that are doing that you're hearing from that strike you as having some strong advocacy on some of the other programs. One of the things I had hoped by leaving this open for public comment is, that we get public comment. I think it's important that these meetings not be seen as occurring in our bubble and that they can get in. I'd really like to get some folks in and see if we can break the logjam out there as people are thinking about this stuff. It's really important, I think, that we get some community buy-in here. Yeah, Jim.
I'll throw something else out. This is from the experience I've had with SCATS and MWAC. There are a lot of projects that are sizable, but because they don't have funding, they're broken into parts. And it's very frustrating when you see the whole need, you see the need for the whole project, but you only get to do one step. If there's some way of combining existing funding with bond money to complete a project or do an entire project, that to me would make sense. I don't know if that to me would make sense.
Do you have an example, Jim? Would that be like McGill? I don't know. I never sure which or which, McGillcrest or?
Yeah, I would say McGillcrest, but it's probably on some of the major things. I'm thinking of Dokes Ferry Road here in West Salem.
Well, Fisher Road's another one, or I don't know what you've got. Chris has got a batch of them out in his area where you can get a piece, but not. Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting idea. Anything else, Courtney?
No, not on this piece. We just have sort of the next steps left, unless you'd like to have other conversation about other topics.
Anyone? Why don't you go ahead and we'll see if next steps prompts any.
Excellent. So as I mentioned, when we gather in February, we'll have the results of the poll that's occurring now, and John Horvick will be here to walk us through the findings and help us gauge sort of what the pulse is out in the larger, broader community. We'll also have more findings or results from some of the community briefings that we're doing out and about. And then in March, like I've mentioned, we'll bring some package of projects to you. I do think it's important to notice, and maybe Peter, you want to chime in on this. We do have solid cost estimates on those portions that are fixed. So the fire equipment and trucks, that's a fixed cost. We know how much that is. The cybersecurity for and the civic center, most of those are fixed costs. It's these crowdsourced projects where we may or may not have accurate cost estimates already, because hopefully we're learning new needs in the community. And that's where the estimating may take us a little bit more time than we have available to keep this moving and get it ready in time. So Peter, do you want to address how we're going to be handling the
thank you,
cost
Courtney.
estimate?
So obviously we're very concerned that the cost estimates be as accurate as possible, because if we take a guess and they end up being low, we end up either not being able to do projects, or the embarrassment of having to have projects on the list that can't be done. If we're too high, then we won't get more projects on the list. So we want to get it about right. So one strategy that we've talked about is, perhaps by no later than March, this committee could kind of give us what you feel is your first tier projects for transportation, for parts, for things that have to be costed. We can apply. We're going to need some consultant help to get this turned around quickly. But if we have a batch of first tier projects, we can cost those out and then let you know, hey, yeah, there's money left over, or no, that uses up all of the buckets of money, or a first tier and a second tier. And then at some point we need to start, firming it up. I mean, it doesn't mean that later on in the process, if there's, oh yeah, hey, but what about this one, or what about that one? We can take onesie twosies, but the big bulk of them, by around March, we'll need to have, hey, these are the ones that the committee's coalescing around, and we can get those cost estimates done.
Great. Okay. Anyone else? I want to also thank Clark and Libby. I think for right now, and I'd want you to correct me, Clark, if I'm wrong on this, or Libby, the information you gave us, the comments and the list that we've got in front of us from you guys, the Salem Community Improvements Funding Needs pages, really give us a quick way to talk about each of these categorical areas. Can we use that now as talking points at some of this stuff, or should we be very, very careful as we use any of this information? This is really handy. I mean, it's real quick and easy to fit this into your repertoire,
We're using it now.
Okay.
And our messaging on the website is consistent with what you're seeing there.
Okay.
And
well, this is great then. I just really like this because I think it gives us very quick answers to some very complicated questions we may not be prepared yet to go into, but we can describe, I think, kind of what we're up to. I thought this was really helpful.
I think the caveat there, Mayor, is that we do expect to make some adjustments in that based on the survey that DHM has underway.
Okay.
And feedback, as a good example is with these community briefings, if you find repeat questions there that we're really not answering, then our job is to see if we can capture that in this super brief form so that we're getting the questions answered.
So something we could do then that would be helpful is, as we're at neighborhood group or any other forum where is keeping track of where we hear questions that aren't being answered and get those to you or to Courtney to you, or what's the best way to work with those?
Yeah, that would be great. Capture them anyway and get them back.
Okay.
The recognize that some of them, and I'll give you an example. Explain to me how fire trucks are wearing out, or fire engines. Why is it that they seem to look great, but some of those require a longer answer than we can answer in this format.
Yeah.
So there will also be like FAQs and other tools that you need for this thing that you can't in two pages. So
Yeah, I think just having this much information is really helpful to at least launch the conversation, and then we can see what we're catching. But yeah, the fire truck thing and trying to explain how much free time those guys have to wash fire trucks just doesn't sell. So okay.
And you're also welcome to refer people to the city's website. If you just type in community bond, it comes up. And people can enter any different project ideas that they might want to share with us.
Now, how does that say how that works again? Community bond under our website, or?
Mm-hmm. If you go to just the City of Salem .net, the homepage.
Okay.
I can actually just put the link in the chat for you guys. The one that we have right now emphasizes the steering committee, because we want to make sure that people know that they can sign up and all of that. But we will be making a whole sort of a nest of pages and materials as the messages start to settle, so that people can print something if they want to take it with them. But they'll also will be adapting the questions on the webpage all the time.
I tell you something that'd be very, very helpful. At least I found them helpful. Excuse me, as if you could take a card size, like one of our business cards, card size that just has the community, whatever the title of this is going to be, and the website on the back, that when someone starts talking to you, you hand it to them. You don't have to try to remember, somebody find a pencil or a pen or anything else. It's just, here's the card. And I'm sure our print shop could put us out a few thousand of those or whatever we need. I have found those very helpful to leave set out. I know a lot of the folks running for office have they use cards or they use some other pieces, but getting that website floating around doesn't hurt a bit. Yes.
Our tension, that creative tension about, are we set on the name? Can we print it? That's the space we're in right now, but we should be able to resolve it quickly as we get more of the polling results and change our tact and have more printed materials.
Okay. Well, these are the fact areas. This is not a campaign here. This is the facts and the basis for the bond measure and explanation. I'm hoping we can fairly soon start talking about the other side of that. And I don't know how we're going to do that exactly, who should be there and how that can be done. But at some point, we've got to find the people who are going to do this campaign. We need to have some folks that'll stand up with us and support it the same way we've done it with the police station. And previous bond measures, we had folks standing up on it, including counselors, and Lewis will know quite a bit about that. But I think it's learning, it's kind of getting a sense of who will we be approaching in the community to be the face of this thing. And I wouldn't wait too long. I mean, we're headed for November.
Yes.
And I'm not sure we're always the best face for this stuff. Yeah, Jim.
Well, I think we're almost done. So I wanted to bring something up. For me, the statistically valid phone survey that we're going through right now is extremely important.
Yeah.
The survey itself, now that I'm one of the people that took it, I found it to be, and Chris, I'm real curious about your sense of this, but I found it to be a little long, but yet easy to get through. Simple questions, but yet not too simple that they weren't understandable. And so I felt as though that it was a truly viable survey.
I agree. I had the same experience. Yeah.
Okay.
And also, thank you so much for that feedback. Do keep in mind that we are planning a second poll later once the bond measure sort of settles. We'll be doing another poll to test how well it performs.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Well, we're adjourned and we meet again when, Courtney?
The 18th of February.
Okay, Kelly, I'm
Did you
sorry.
like that?
Same
That was-
time, same place.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Have a nice weekend.